Canada builds more homes per capita than any G7 nation. In 2023, it constructed 6.5 units per thousand residents. The United States, just 4.2. Yet Canadian housing costs twice as much relative to income, the most productive builder in the developed world, the least affordable market. But here's the paradox. If Canada is building faster than America, why is it less affordable than America? This is the Real Estate Historian, where policy, demography, and political incentives collide, and the House always wins. The conventional explanation is failure, bureaucratic delays, construction bottlenecks, greedy developers. But if you trace the zoning maps, follow the immigration targets, and examine who votes in municipal elections, you discover something unsettling. The shortage isn't accidental. It's architectural. That doesn't mean there's a conspiracy. It means there's a system, and the system is working exactly as it was designed to. To understand why building more doesn't lower prices, we need to go back to 1946. That year, Canada created the Central Mortgage and Housing Corporation, now CMHC, to solve a housing crisis. Returning soldiers needed homes. The government's solution was direct: build them. Victory houses, social housing projects, the state as developer. But by the 1990s, CMHC had transformed. It was no longer building homes, it was insuring mortgages. The National Housing Act mortgage-backed securities program let banks package loans and sell them to investors with a government guarantee. The federal government's exposure to housing shifted from physical shelter to financial solvency. CMHC needed stable or rising prices to minimize default risk. So did the banks. Meanwhile, in 1967, Canada revolutionized immigration policy. Order in Council PC 1967-1616 introduced the point system, assessing immigrants on education and skills, not country of origin. Immigration became an economic engine. The federal government sets the targets, but it has no power over municipal zoning. 2 accelerators, no brakes. British Columbia weaponized it first. In 1973, the Agricultural Land Reserve locked a hard boundary around Vancouver. Ontario followed in 2005 with the Greenbelt, 2 million acres of protected land circling Toronto. Both policies succeeded in preserving farmland. Both created pressure cookers, with outward expansion blocked and inward densification restricted by single-family zoning. Development had nowhere to go but up, literally in towers and metaphorically in price. Fast forward to 2023, and Canada's population grew by 3.2%, the highest rate since 1957. That's 1.2 million new residents in a single year. Housing completions? 240,000. Do the math, assuming 2.5 people per household, Canada needed 480,000 new units. It delivered half. The Parliamentary Budget Officer estimates Canada needs 3.1 million additional homes by 2030 just to restore 2003 affordability levels. In Vancouver, the Royal Bank calculates that the median earner would need to spend 131.8% of their gross income, more than everything they earn, just to service an average mortgage. Nationally, housing costs consume 58.4% of median income. In 1990, a typical family could save a down payment in 10 years. Today, 22 years. But who exactly is stopping the construction? Let's follow the incentives. The federal government needs immigration to drive GDP. Without population growth, Canada's per capita productivity stagnation would be undeniable. Municipalities need development charges to fund infrastructure without raising property taxes on voters. Homeowners, 66% of the electorate, need scarcity to protect their primary asset. Every zoning restriction is a vote for their own net worth. It's not a market failure, It's a circular system. Ottawa adds demand, municipalities restrict supply, homeowners vote to keep it that way, and GDP rises on paper while productivity flatlines. But there's a deeper layer, the most powerful of all, the financial system. Canada's Big Five banks hold 59% of the mortgage market. Their stability is paramount. During the 2022 rate shock, regulators allowed negative amortization, letting borrowers fall behind on interest, adding unpaid amounts to principal. Some mortgages stretched to 70 years on paper. The system bent so it wouldn't break. Behind the banks sit the pension funds. The Ontario Teachers' Pension Plan holds $28.8 billion in real estate, 11% of their portfolio. The retirement security of a boomer teacher is partially derived from the high rents paid by a millennial tenant. And municipalities. Development charges in Toronto account for 30% of a new home's cost. Cities need high prices to fund low property taxes. Everyone at the top needs the market to stay expensive. For decades, this system has sustained itself through falling interest rates and rising immigration. But we've seen it crack before. In 1989, Toronto's housing market collapsed. Prices fell 27 to 38%. It took 13 years for nominal prices to recover and 22 years in inflation-adjusted terms. An entire generation of buyers was underwater. Then came 2008. The American market imploded. Canada didn't. CMHC kept insuring. Liquidity kept flowing. Prices kept climbing. Canadians congratulated themselves on superior regulation, but they missed the reset. The U.S. deleveraged. Canada doubled down. In 2022, the Bank of Canada raised rates at the fastest pace in decades. The predicted crash? It didn't come. Prices softened in Toronto and Vancouver. They rose in Calgary and Edmonton as Canadians fled to affordability. The system bent. It didn't break, because breaking would hurt everyone who matters. And yet, even after every correction, the same logic restarts. That's because the Canadian housing market isn't designed to be affordable. It's designed to be an asset class. Consider the math. The median Canadian household holds 66% of its wealth in home equity. A 30% price correction, enough to restore affordability, would wipe out a third of their net worth. It would impair bank balance sheets. It would collapse pension fund returns. It would crater municipal budgets dependent on development charges. No politician can campaign on that platform. Vote for me and I'll destroy your retirement savings. Doesn't win elections. So instead, we get policy theater. A foreign buyer ban targeting 2 to 6% of purchases while domestic demand grows by 1 million people annually. First-time buyer incentives that increase purchasing power without increasing supply, bidding up the same scarce homes. Tax-free savings accounts that help 10 people compete for 5 houses. Every solution is designed to help buyers compete for scarce housing, not to make housing less scarce, because making housing less scarce would make homeowners less wealthy, and homeowners vote. The C.D. Howe Institute calculates that Canadian workers receive 55 cents of business investment for every dollar American workers receive. Why? Because capital flows to the highest return. In Canada, that's real estate, not innovation. The housing market isn't just unaffordable. It's a black hole, sucking capital from the productive economy, starving the future to fund the present. The housing crisis isn't a bug. It's a feature. That's why the Canadian dream of homeownership is only half the story. The other half is the Canadian reality, those who got in profit from those who can't. In 1990, a family could save a down payment in a decade. Today, it takes 22 years. It is mathematically impossible for a median earner to buy a home without inherited wealth. The bank of mom and dad isn't a helping hand. It's a prerequisite. This isn't a market fluctuation. It's a class reordering. Wealth is no longer earned through labor. It's transmitted through property. Your life chances increasingly depend not on your income, but on whether your parents owned land. The research calls it neo-feudal, a society where shelter isn't a right earned through work, but a privilege of inheritance, where a generation of renters pays into pension funds that profit from their displacement. At the center of this system, there isn't one villain to blame. It isn't Ottawa. It isn't the banks. It isn't your local councillor. It's all of them and all of us. Canada is playing musical chairs, but the government keeps adding players faster than carpenters can build chairs. The music never stops. The buy-in keeps rising. A home once meant shelter. Today, it means speculation. But if the next generation can't afford to buy, who will the current owners sell to? The feudal North is already here. If this gave you a new perspective, subscribe. The answers are in the policy. I'll show you where to look.